Hi, today we're after little grebes or dabchicks. Now when I was young, little grebes were on almost every farm pool. The tiniest little pond, you'd have a pair of little grebes breeding. That's no longer the case. On the estate where I do most of my photography, we've got 3 lakes where there's been little grebes over the years breeding, but the last couple of years not a single pair has bred. Now I'm on a different lake today. This is not on the estate, it's still close to home. It's a new place I've got permission for. As a wildlife photographer, you spend a lot of time knocking on farm doors asking for permission to go onto the land. 9 times out of 10 they say yes, and they have here, and there's been a good number of little grebes on here for a long time. I've walked past this pond many times and seen them. Well, pond, we call it a lake, it's a small lake.
Now when little grebe are not actively feeding in open water, they hang about in the reed beds, and they can be very hard to detect. Apart from they're very noisy birds, and it's often the call that first tells you they're there. I'm surprised to see this bird in its more colourful spring plumage. It's only the 3rd of December, he should be in his grey winter plumage. Once they've settled on a spot, they just hang about there. He's not sleeping, just resting, and occasionally he moves a little bit and then just rests some more. And when they keep still, it would be very hard to spot them. They blend into the vegetation very well. But most of the day they have to keep fairly active to consume enough food. They dive under the water, finding aquatic insects, small fish, tadpole, mollusks. Some water birds, when they dive, they leap out of the water to give themselves some momentum to push down into the water. The little grebe doesn't really do that. It flattens its feathers to push out the air, and then it just takes a tiny little jump and pushes its head down. So it's not that dramatic. You watch a coot or a tufted duck, it's a very dramatic leap out of the water. They create a lot of air bubbles when they dive. Now large fish such as pike, they will predate little grebes, so I'd imagine they're very sensitive to any movement under the water. And I can only imagine that that bird just felt something move underneath it. On the day I was very much concentrating on diving shots with video, but I'll just show you a handful of stills pictures.
I've got plenty of pictures now of the little grebe diving. That's not very difficult to get. You just keep the bird in focus, keep the camera running, and at some point it's going to dive, and it's diving quite often, every few minutes. Now I want the far more difficult shot. I want the bird as it comes up out of the water. Now how do you do that? First of all, you don't know where it's going to break the surface of the water, and it's very unlikely to be in focus at that point either. So it's really just a question of luck. But luck comes from just persistence. Keep doing it. He who stays the longest gets the shot. So you just keep the camera running, and you're guessing, you're just using your instincts. But if you watch the bird long enough, you start to see that they're very prone to diving and coming up maybe just a few feet to the left or the right, and then your sort of instincts take over. You say, I think that bird's going to come up to the right, and eventually you might be right.
But far more often you're totally wrong, and all you get is a bit of footage after it's come up and it's got a prey item in its bill, a caddisfly larvae. Inside that hard case there's an insect, it's got to extract it. For the slow motion video I'm using the Lumix G9 Mark II 120 frames per second 4K. The feet on a little grebe are located right at the back of the body, so it can't bring a foot forward and help with the process of extracting this food from the casing. Some species of birds would do that. So it can only thrash it about in the water. It's about half extracted now. If I pause it at this point, that red line, below it is the case and above it is the larvae. And if you watch very carefully about now, the case goes flying through the air to the left. There. So getting footage after the bird has come up and it's got something in its bill, that's easy. But getting it in focus in the frame before it comes up out of the water, much harder. So here we are, this is the situation. The bird has dived very close to here, and it's those bubbles on the right hand side that are the clue that it's still there. Occasional bubbles keep coming up. I keep the camera running, hopeful. At least it's not costing me any money keeping the camera running. And there we go. A larger caddisfly larva. They nearly always turn their backs to you. They want their head away from the light. And the only other occasion I got it right was this one. Similar situation. Another bird on the same lake, and this is more the winter plumage. In fact, they can lose that colour on the side of the head completely. I'm using the Buteo single person hide here. This is the Mark II, but they are on the Mark III today. And although they have two apertures at the front of the hide, an upper one and a lower one, sometimes I turn the hide around and I shoot underneath the door because that's an even lower aperture. When I'm doing that and I'm sitting in the hide, I have the screen extended so I can just look down on that. I don't have to get my eye to the viewfinder. And as most photographers do, I prefer that lower angle, although it does make it more difficult to react quickly, especially when you're trying to film the bird coming up through the surface of the water. Thanks for watching.